Cool. So yeah, this is about personalization in WordPress. Real quick about me. That did not work. Okay, yeah. So I'm the founder of an abstract agency. I've been doing WordPress for 8 years, and I'm also a co-organizer of this meetup, and sometimes WordCamp NYC. Which hopefully we'll see this year. I don't know if Mervin's on the call, but yeah, we'll see what happens this year with the remote version of it. I'm currently a lead product. My day gig is a lead product analytics engineer at the Knot Worldwide. But one of the cool things is like with this job, I said to them, "Hey, WordPress. We don't even use WordPress at the Knot. We use Ruby. We use all different like Ruby, Drupal. But I said, hey, I need to be involved in WordPress because WordPress is such a Swiss Army knife. It helps me understand like what I'm doing." And I do quick experiments. When you see some of what I'm showing you today, like I experiment with this day to day with my current job. And then I was formerly a lead software engineer at Dow Jones. So if anyone wants just like screenshots, welcome, tweet or tag me on Instagram or Twitter with the hashtag WPNYC. It's always good to promote this. So I just like to put that in there. Cool. And then finally, this is 100% my personal and professional opinion. I can't help you if you install any of these plugins or do any of these things and it breaks your site. I just want to warn. I just like to say that because I can't respond to meetup messages. All right, so cool. So what is personalization? You may have been on a website recently. I don't think Meetup does it. It's very difficult to get done right, and I'll explain why. So default, when you visit a site, it says hello user, like hello WordPress user, hello Meetup user, hello anything, right? And a better version of that is to
Victor,
but the reason that personalization, you lost my screen?
Your audio, you were going in and out.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, so yeah, so again, like with hello Victor, they would need to get that data from somewhere, right? So sometimes you'll see an application where they don't properly implement the way that personalization is managed, and you end up with something like this, hello user 1234, right? So that requires, and I think a lot of the times personalization is a marketing discipline and less so a developer discipline. And a developer would know to say, hey, why don't we put in a conditional that says hello person or hello friend or hello whatever, if their username is not available for whatever reason. And that's why like a lot of marketing people, they love personalization, but they're not, usually they're not developers and they don't think in that mindset. Today, and it was interesting, I met with Steve before this meetup just to say, hey, what would you want to see on your site, right? How would you use this? And what Steve said to me was, hey, let's talk about like, what would it look like on pick lists? So if you guys aren't aware, Steve manages a open source plugin for the WordPress community that it allows you to build your fields, custom plugins, custom fields, custom post types, meta boxes, a bunch of different stuff programmatically. But what I did was went through his site and said, how can we, and I'll show that when we get to the end of this, like what, where we can optimize. I'm going to walk through how to personalize content based on, where someone sits in a funnel, what to personalize. So like, what do you want to personalize on the page, and tools for personalization. And by what I mean with a funnel, right? And this is just something I only in this last week realized like how much people usually think funnels when they think Google Analytics and they're poking around and seeing where the user comes from, et cetera. But a funnel is the basic, a very basic funnel is, hey, someone has never heard of you, someone has visited the site, someone has almost purchased on the site, and someone has, purchased successfully. Can everyone just mute their microphones? I'm hearing like a lot of feedback.
Hold on.
So yeah, so
Larry Rampula, it looks like your mic is on.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah, so with personalization, we want to think about where that person sits in the funnel, right? So again, like a basic funnel is awareness. They've never heard of you and they never visited the site before, so they would get the hello user. They sign up for your email list, they would get the hello Victor. they almost made a purchase, they would get hello Victor, are you ready to buy? And if they made a purchase, they would get hello Victor, here's your discount code for another purchase. So let's go through some of those, right? So how to personalize. We could personalize by preference. We could personalize by user location. We can personalize by user interactions. And we could personalize by query parameters. And I'll get a little more, that's a little more developer heavy, but I'll go through some examples of that. What can we personalize? We can personalize calls to action. So like buy now, download this email, sign up for our email list. You can personalize messaging. So for example, again, like hello Victor, hello developer. We could personalize language selection. So by default, when our user visits a site, are we displaying it in their native language? And I would, this is again a developer thing. I will have people that use geo-targeting for language preference, not realizing that a developer may prefer to communicate in English. So it's better to have that detect browser settings. And then personalizing by privacy. So all this personalization goes out the window if if you're not compliant, if you're violating CCPA or GDPR. And that's like one of the biggest things that I work with day to day at my job, because we are a global company. We have a presence in all of South America, Europe, and with all these different changing laws, we have to keep track of it. And then the tools to personalize, I'm going to go over Google Optimize, geo-targeting plugins, CRM integrations, user role plugin integrations, and then consent platforms, which is what I spoke about before with personalization. And I'm going to go touch on each of those. So preference personalization. You've seen this before. When you are in WordPress, you say, hey, I don't want to see the admin bar. I put my name in there. I put a photo in there. And then that way, when you go and add a comment, that comment then shows up with your gravatar. Your password changes, your email preferences. The biggest complaint we get for the meetup sometimes is I get too many emails, and that is your personal preference. You just have to go into Meetup and modify your email preferences, right? And this is a user personally selecting their preferences, and then those preferences are surfaced via conditionals in your code. But then there's location personalization, and this is actually from another application, but if you guys aren't familiar, when you visit meetup.com, right? If you're in meetup.com in Mexico City, it's going to show Mexico, Mexico City related meetups. If you're in, New York City, it shows New York City meetups, right? And so where is the user located? Also location preference. So I work with art galleries where there are people who are traveling a lot. And so they actually want it to prefer, if the user's logged in, to show the content based on their location preference. Then behavior personalization, right? That is as simple as what pages do they visit? You as a developer, and I'll get to these later in the tools, when you integrate with the CRM, if someone visits the contact page, the pricing page, if they visit like 3 other key pages, tag them as a hot lead. Whereas if someone goes and clicks the careers page, then I would argue that person is just kicking the tires on your site, right? And therefore they may not be, I would remove them, I remove the tag of hot lead. And that can be done via tools like ActiveCampaign, and I'll get to that with the CRM integrations. I have some example funnels I'll show you. What CTAs did they click? If they already subscribed to your newsletter, and how many, I'm sure many of you have had this happen, you visit a blog and every time you read the blog, they're like, join our newsletter, but you signed up for the newsletter like 15 times, right? And that's just a missing personalization. They should be saying, like, if the user is subscribed, never show that to them again. And what emails have they opened? So if someone has, and this is a very common marketing tactic, if someone has opened every email in your email sequence and clicked a link in every single email in your email sequence, that person is now an educated consumer. And so that person may be better to advertise to, that person may be better to market to. And so instead of wasting all your ad money on people who like WordPress, and that's like a terrible thing to target, by the way, because people who like WordPress, you could be like people who like WordPress.org. That's a very broad niche, right? But if you say like people who visited my website or opened my emails and are interested in WordPress on Facebook ads, target them, and you're going to get a very small niche, and you're going to get a better bang for your buck. And then there's query parameter personalization. And so if anyone's not familiar with, I probably should have put an example in here. When you go and visit a website, there's like a question mark and then a bunch of random characters after your URL. And what you can then do is you can say, if the person came from groupon.com, if the person came from livingsocial.com, if the person came from facebook.com, you could show them something totally different on the page. What campaign did they interact with? If you create a campaign targeted towards developers, then on the website, in the emails, everywhere, you can show developer targeted content. So I worked with a AI video marketing startup, and they had 3 different types of personas. And persona 1 was a media manager, persona 2 was publishers, and persona 3 was sports broadcasters. And if people interacted with more than 3 emails or blog posts from those niches, they would then get tagged with that niche, and the website would act accordingly. Yeah. So what can you personalize? And this is kind of like a hilarious version of personalization. If you guys haven't seen this before, what Money Lab did was an experiment. And they wanted to show how personalized or how crazy you could get with personalization. So on the right side, you see this advertisement where it's this guy saying, "Thought you could get away from me? I want your email address. You visited my website, were asked for your email address, you came to Facebook afterwards, there's no escape." And I'm going to show you right now, this site is still up. It's called Money, and I'll put it in the links. It's moneylab.co/email. And when I went to navigate away, it said, "Hey, where do you think you're going? According to science, exit intent pop-ups convert like gangbusters." So that personalization was based on me, going to navigate away from the site. I close it, and I was like, wow, a 90-second pop-up for the ultimate conversion. And again, this is going to be a little annoying. Can I have your email address before you scroll? And then I continue to scroll. It slides in, and then it says, "Hey, go visit Facebook. I'm retargeting you." This is like pretty wild. I would not get this crazy. But think about that. You could have it where if the person's already interacted and gotten all of these pop-ups, don't target them again, right? And try to do, hey, maybe show the slide in the first time they visit, the pop-up the second time they visit, and then if they never interact, just turn it off and then try it off for 30 days. So you can also personalize product images. We worked with a Broadway ticketing company where the Broadway ticketing company had about 100 shows. And per those 100 shows, they had different verticals and niches. And so they were having to manage around 1,000 to 2,000 landing pages. What we did was we went and conditionally loaded the product images, the product titles, and everything based on the ad that the person clicked. So if the person, clicked an ad about the Rockettes, the landing page would then show a Rockettes image and say, "Get Rockettes tickets starting at X dollars," and it would pull the dollar amount from the actual ad. And that was done via Google Optimize. And again, like remarketing, which I just showed you guys, like this was, you could retarget anyone, whoever visited the website. And then finally, also you could personalize, the privacy policies. Like if the person opts out and says, "I don't want any of this," you should not be retargeting them. And you want to stay abreast of those laws. So I'm going to go over some of the tools to optimize, and I'll go over and just show you how these things work. So if you're a non-developer and you're using WordPress, one of the first things you can do is use Google Optimize. And so Google Optimize, it's free. And you can do up to 20 personalization experiments. And if you see in the image that I have here, it is allowing a non-technical user to go and change the URL or change the text of this heading 3. And if you see on the right side, they have options there where you can edit the element. And in those experiments, you can decide where the person's from, what are the query parameters, what do they do, and it's really simple to use. But the only thing I would warn is there's performance issues with Google Optimize. It is not your own server-side content. It's not using a CRM. It's calling out to a Google library, and it's kind of slow, and it has these weird flicker issues sometimes where the text will flicker and not show properly. But you today, and Google Optimize even with COVID-19, Google now has they've made it so easy to install because they allow people to manipulate the hours, the time, have a COVID-19 banner. So that's a really easy tool to use, and you can get up and running about 30 minutes. Then you can do geo-targeting, right? And so you could target by location, you could target by short codes or Gutenberg integration, but I would warn you, don't abuse it. And so in these slides when they go live, by the way, these are like links, but I use, I'm a WP Engine customer, and so WP Engine allows you to, it's a plugin, but then you have to pay for the service. And what they do is they cache. And so what happens is it's saying, hey, give me this page. It detects either the country, the region, the city, the postal code, the latitude and longitude. And what it does is it's actually caching different versions of your website. And so if you end up having too many cache buckets, so for example, I will, again, this is like why marketers need developer help. I will go and visit, work with a client, and they will say to me like, oh yeah, like give us 50 buckets, one for each state. And what they don't realize is that then takes a lot of server resources. And then also another repercussion is you can't cache or geocache cart pages. You can't geocache anything that it needs to be served live. So with WooCommerce, you have to be careful. And WP Engine out of the box, the support isn't great. They're a great product, and this is a great tool, but you need like tier 3 support to get this solved. But once you get it up and running and you set your buckets up, it's very simple. And so, for example, anyone who's used WordPress is familiar with shortcodes. And if you see here, it says here, geo-IP content country equals DE, and it says to the person, Guten Tag. And if the person visits and their geo-IP content country equals France, it says bonjour, right? The only thing that is here that they don't show in the documentation, and again, this is like a warning, I would say also to add a fallback and say, if geo-IP does not equal DE or FR, then show this. Because if you, with this actual shortcode example that I'm showing here on the right, if they're not in France or Germany, it shows nothing. But another benefit as well is like if anyone's not familiar with GDPR and CCPA, what that means is that California has different privacy laws, and so does Europe. And so when I first start with geo-targeting for customers, they're using things like Marketo, HubSpot, which are like, they're very privacy heavy, and they gather a lot of data. And so what I tell users or clients to do is to say, hey, let's start with California, the United States, and anywhere outside the United States, or Europe, China, and California. And so that way, like so the fallback should be anything that is not California or Europe. And then that way, the general experience should be non-GDPR, non-CCPA. Cool. And then so after locations, then you can do a CRM sync, right? And so a CRM sync, if you see here on the right, this is an example where if someone adds to cart and they completed a checkout, right? If they completed a checkout, send them a welcome email. 3 days later, say, leave us a review. If they have not completed a checkout, send them an email, please come back. 1 day later, send them a coupon, right? And that way, and it was funny, I was on a trip to Greece like 4 years ago, and I remember being in a restaurant with like this travel group, and I found out I paid $2,000 less for my trip to Greece than the person in the group with us. And it had been because I'd been reading this company's emails, and I kept like, reading them and never booking a trip. And then finally I got like a 50% coupon code because I guess they were desperate to fill the trip. And so a lot of the times, like personalization, you can use it to like do a blowout sale, but you don't want to do that blowout sale to people you never worked with before. You want to do it people who have been subscribed for a long time. And if anyone's not aware, like this is a very complicated integration to do on the top right, right? But what I love is I use this thing called WP Fusion, and WP Fusion takes care of this. It automatically connects with WooCommerce. It automatically connects with easy digital downloads. It automatically connects to CRMs, and I'll show you guys in a second. It's developer friendly, but it has a learning curve. And what I mean by that is, let me see if I can zoom. I don't know if I can zoom in on this somehow. If you see here, this is actually a WooCommerce table. And what it's doing is it's marrying all of the WooCommerce fields to your CRM data, right? But if you don't know WooCommerce fields, your CRM fields in and out, if you don't know that stuff, you can mess it up really poorly. I mean, so really badly. And then it just becomes a mess. And so just to show you guys, like WP Fusion, before you jump in there, they have a free version, but they have a CRM integration guide, right? And they even have recipes, right? So if you guys after this call want to check it out, they have like LearnDash plus WooCommerce, right? And you can go here and they have recipes. So you don't have to worry, like applied tag abandoned cart, wait 1 hour. If they get tagged abandoned cart, then send an email, otherwise exit. And you don't need to go and figure out how to do these. There will be default integrations. So that's why I recommend WP Fusion. It's totally worth it. And it saves a lot, even for myself as a developer. I prefer to use WP Fusion. And similar to, as I showed with the GeoIP conditionals from WP Engine, WP Fusion offers the same conditional tags out of the box. And again, same thing, super robust, developer friendly, but there's a big learning curve. Finally, one of the other big tools is privacy and consent. And so there are tools like OneTrust. And what OneTrust does is it integrates with either Google Tag Manager, it connects with Google Optimize, it connects with CRMs, everything that I covered before. And what it does is, and I don't have the OneTrust dashboard available to show, but what OneTrust will do is it will hook into those tools. And if you guys see here on the right side, this is like a consent thing where it's saying, hey, do you allow advertisements? Hey, do you allow this? Hey, do you allow that? And as the person clicks what they allow, it turns on or off those preferences. And so these tools, they allow for privacy compliance. They do, and I want to warn you, they're not set it and forget it. So you almost like on a monthly basis have to go and make sure that your tools are up to date. And that's why I recommend it's very important that don't, and this is like, so many people are, I'm going to build my own CRM. I'm going to build my own geo tool. I'm going to build my own whatever. But the thing they forget is like when it comes to personalization, there's a lot of compliance you have to take into thought. And so these things are going to be available, via OneTrust, and these tools, they take care of all that kind of stuff for you. And again, like there's a big learning curve. But the one thing I like about, and I think actually the WordPress version of OneTrust is I think more enterprise. There's a tool called Cookie Pro, and it's from OneTrust. And if you use Cookie Pro with WP Engine, it all just works. I don't know how else to say it, but that's why like with WP Fusion, WP Engine, GeoIP, and OneTrust Cookie Pro, it just works. And it's really slick. So that's why I really like it. Cool. So I did not get a chance to go through what I was hoping to do today was to go through, and by the way, look, this popped back up. What I was hoping to do today was to actually have like this set up in my CRM, but I was not able to spin up a free version of the CRM. But I just want to go through this. This is Steve's site pick list. And we went through and I had a conversation with Steve and did like a small mini consultation of, hey, how would this work? What would this be? What would the funnel be? And I made some basic recommendations. So I'm going to go through this and talk about what Steve and I went through and identified for his site. So this is a very standard site. You come here and I don't know if everyone could see my mouse. I'll just like swing it around so you could see. And I think it normally does that zoom in thing. Obviously like download pick list, stay up to date with the email list, testimonials, learn more about the framework, built for developers. But what could we personalize on here, right? We could actually amplify this CTA, right? Instead of staying up to date with pick list, I've never visited pick list before. I don't understand the value of pick list. Why would I even want pick list, right? And so we could update this CTA to say something along the lines of like, get 5 tips to streamline your development workflow. And don't even use the word pick list. Just say, hey, 5 tips to streamline your development workflow. Done. And that would be the the level 1 CTA. And what then we can do with a tool like a tool like WP Fusion, when that person subscribes, we can tag them as a subscriber. And then what Steve could do, instead of saying stay up to date with pick list or saying, get 5 tips to streamline your workflow, then have the download pick list, right? Have download pick list be the CTA. And when the person clicks download pick list, tag them as downloaded pick list. And then when that person is downloaded pick list, don't even show this CTA or just show the latest blog post. And the same thing here, you can go and conditionally load. One of the things that I love about CRM emails, and I think I showed in the preview for ActiveCampaign, you may have seen this. You may have received an email and it says, hey, welcome to this email list. Are you a developer? Are you a designer? Or none of the above? When you click that, I am a developer, what that person's doing is tagging you. They're tagging you in their CRM. And so what Steve and I spoke about was, hey, he was sending an email where he would actually get a reply. And what I said to Steve was, well, wait a minute, you're manually replying. What you can do instead is when the person gets the welcome email, you integrate it with the CRM and you ask the person, click here if you're a developer, click here if you're a designer, click here if you're none of the above. Then when that person clicks I'm a developer, they will get developer-focused testimonials. They will get built for developers. And if they click none of the above, they could get a generic, this could be stacked in a different order. It could be built for business at the top, right? Or this could be, we could reorder this whole section based on the user preferences. Yeah. And so the other thing as well is like if someone's logged in, we could even just get rid of download pick list and say, hey, get the latest blog post. So those are, that's content personalization. And again, like I said, out of the box, WordPress is only one of the only tools that I have had that actually makes this even like easy to do. So it's 7:55, we're like an hour finished. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't see any questions coming up. I'll ask some more. I'll ask questions. Tell me.
Oh, there we go. I see a question right now. Or yeah, Steve, you want to go ahead?
Oh, I was going to ask about WP Fusion, a little bit more about WP Fusion. It seems like a pretty powerful tool. What are your favorite recipes?
So my favorite recipe with WooCommerce, it just so if you guys aren't aware, like WooCommerce has email drip campaign tools, and the issue is that you'll have one email system, I think it's like what the hell's the name of that company? There is like WooCommerce follow-up emails, right? Or WooCommerce cart emails. And the problem is those abandoned cart emails, they belong to WooCommerce, right? And so one of my favorite recipes is to do abandoned cart emails from ActiveCampaign. And so just the minute you connect WooCommerce and you connect ActiveCampaign, it automatically syncs. And then actually, I'll just give you guys, you see ActiveCampaign. And all these companies now have this. And actually, I recommend when you're using a CRM, make sure that it has recipes. And so with WP Fusion, you can just do an abandoned cart email follow-up automation, and you just import it. You log in and you import the recipe, and they get tagged purchase completed or purchase not completed. The biggest problem with ActiveCampaign is hooking up to your site. And WP Fusion does that for you. So my number one recipe is WP Fusion, just auto tagging someone on checkout, auto tagging someone on not checking out, auto tagging someone who has viewed particular products. And with WP Fusion, it can send a catalog of all the products the person previously viewed, or if they only viewed one product, it will show like 4 products that are similar in that same niche. So anything like that, like emails are great. And then my other favorite recipe is just CTA control. With WP Fusion, you can determine whether or not the user has, interact with a CTA. And so for me, that's really great because I do see better engagement with the website where people aren't getting frustrated because they're getting 100 CTAs.
I'm just going to do a quick follow-up because you mentioned something, and then I'll get to Chris's question. The WP Fusion, you mentioned that you can track the products an individual user has viewed, even if they're not logged in?
Yeah, so that you want to fire an event. So on the product view page, you can fire events and tag them. And again, like this would more be like you can have a tag fire when they view a page. So you can tag them with those products. And I would normally tag by category because if you tag by individual products, it gets a little overly complex. And then I would tag by product when they add to cart. So any action that they take in WordPress, you can tie to a tag.
Nice. All right, so Chris is asking more about this personalization. If they're not logged in, are they being tracked by cookies? How is this working?
It's via cookies. Yep.
Okay.
So what happens with WP Fusion, and it's actually in their documentation, if a user is, visits the site, and that's actually ActiveCampaign does it as well. And I would check the documentation. But so for example, I think Google Analytics, it with the default privacy policy, it dumps cookies after 7 days. And I would even be aware I think Chrome is going to kill third-party cookies within the next 6 months, or modify third-party cookies. So the thing you want to do is constantly be getting the user to come back to your site so you can re-cookie them. And that's why the most important thing is to get their email address.
Interesting. Does this integrate with Google Analytics? Does WP Fusion integrate with Google Analytics so you can use those tags?
Well, so Google Analytics has the third-party cookies, but no, it doesn't. It doesn't. I don't know if WP Fusion directly integrates, but the reason I brought up Google Analytics is to say that they're all doing this. Usually Google, because they own Chromium or Chrome, they lead the charge, and so they're the ones. Chrome and Google. It started with Google Analytics, where they started to modify the cookie length and how long they would track it. And that's the other thing why I say, like, get the person's email and get them to create an account, because the minute they create an account, you can always then re-cookie them. Whereas if they don't visit the site for 7 days and they don't log in, you have no way to, then personalize or retarget them.
Do you have any tips and tricks on how to get a user to create an account?
So that's incentivization. Again, like for things like WooCommerce, you can say, like, to view, like in a lot of merchant marketplaces do this, to view prices, you have to sign up. To get discounts, sign up, get a discount code, and experiment with those. And Google Optimize, you can run an experiment. You can say, you can run 2 different CTAs with Google Optimize and say, like, get a 10% discount, to view prices, do this. And so that's like the best way to get a person to sign up.
Okay. Theo's asking, for a complete noob, where would you recommend he start?
So for a complete noob, I would just download the free version of either Google Optimize or WP Fusion. WP Fusion has a free version. And so the free version of WP Fusion, I would just connect, either MailerLite has a free MailerLite. I don't think MailChimp has a free version anymore. But just connect that and set up an email CTA. And modify the CTA based on user interaction. So if someone has visited your CTA or signed up for your CTA, then just, if they've already subscribed, then hide it. And that's the easiest thing you can do. Just don't annoy people who already have opted in, right? And that's, I think you can even do that if you use MailerLite and WP Fusion, the free version. You can set that up in about a half a day.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions for Victor?
And yeah, there is WP Fusion. Yeah, WP Fusion Lite. It doesn't, and so just it's synchronized with contact records, but does not have. So you won't get WooCommerce. That's the big thing. If you go to WP Fusion Lite, you can synchronize your CRM, but it won't work with like WooCommerce, LearnDash, Gravity Forms, Elementor, or any of those. So if you use Elementor or Beaver Builder, you can even conditionally. So instead of me having to go and write these conditionals as a developer, it adds like a little. Yeah, it works with Salesforce. Someone just asked that. Yeah, and so it works. And if you go to the WP Fusion website, it has like all the CRMs it works with.
Nice. I find this so interesting. Anyone else with questions? Awesome. All right. Thank you, Victor. I love this presentation. Thank you so much.
Cool. No worries. All right. Thank you, everyone.